Gonna be 5 hours.
Okay, we are recording.
The West Dakota Water Development March meeting is called to order. The first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the second item on the agenda is the roll call of members.
Okay, Koth.
Here.
Boucher. Driscoll. Here. McGregor.
Here.
Mullally.
Here.
Young.
Here.
Mack.
Here.
Klein.
Here.
Care.
Here.
One absent.
One absent, okay. Okay, the next item is item number 4, conflict of interest disclosure. If any board member has a conflict of interest on any item on the agenda, please state it. See no one responding to that. Moving on to the approval of the minutes for the January meeting.
Move to approve.
Move to approve by Driscoll. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mullally.
And Mr. Chair, I'd like to mention at 5:45 I'll have to leave
Okay.
if we're still going. No, that was yesterday.
Okay, discussion on the motion. Hearing no discussion on the motion, all those in favor of approving the minutes state by stating aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay, moving on to item number 6, the treasurer's report. That looks like it's you, Mr.
Yes, it is.
We gotta approve the agenda.
Oh, excuse me.
Okay.
I jumped over item number 3. I was just so excited. I apologize. So we're gonna tack back to item 3, which is the approval of the agenda.
Move to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Move to approve.
Second.
Before we vote, one quick change. Item 8, it is the Black Hills Watershed Collaborative.
What did I put?
Collaboration.
And what is it?
Collaborative.
Collaborative.
Does the approver and the second approve the friendly amendment to
Agreed.
Agreed.
So who?
Klein.
McGregor said first? or-
McGregor and then Klein?
No, I can't remember what it was. What was it? What did I have?
You had
Collaboration.
yep, and it is collaborative. Okay. Discussion on the motion. Hearing none. All those in favor of approval of the agenda state by stating aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same side. Okay, the agenda is approved. Now, moving back to item 6, which is the treasurer's report.
Okay, so treasurer's report as of a week ago, Monday, on March 2nd. Total assets right now are just over $1 million, so $1,041,792.01. and that is between the bank accounts and the savings account at Raymond James. On the year-to-date comparison sheet, the period that this report covers was January 5th through March 2nd. And then in the far right column is the year-to-date, which is only a 4-day difference from last meeting. And so there's going to be very little, if any, changes on those two columns this month. But there was a question, let me find it here. Maybe that's already, oh, sorry. So back on the first one, Director McGregor asked a question in the executive meeting, this negative, no, that wasn't right.
It was the 701 for accounts payable because the bills.
Yes, the minus 701, that's because I have put several of our bills, like the phone bill and the rental of the office at the garage, on automatic withdrawal from the checking account. And so if they haven't been claimed yet, but it's showing that it's there, that's where that comes from. Okay, on the second page, the grants, again, that's income, that's what we request from ASAP for the bar engineering invoices as part of the Deerfield Pactola Dam project, looking at the riverware model that they're doing. So that's what that is. And then the expenses for each of the accounts and non-project expenses shown in their column. And again, that net income is really a kind of a false number, because if the only income through the month is we're going to receive some interest from the Raymond James account, if there's a bar engineering request, then that money will come from the federal side. And then there's going to be a few dollars each month that comes from Pennington County. But if that's not enough to cover just the normal expenses and project expenses, it'll show a negative. But here in a couple of months, when the first half of the county taxes comes in, then that'll be a huge positive, and then it'll probably be negative again. So that's just a negative by default of the software. So. Then the next page is project summary. The shaded lines are the projects that are active, and total project obligation as of the 2nd of March is $427,300.23. And then the next figure 3 is the timeline that shows the active projects in red, closed projects, or sorry, the active projects in blue, closed projects in red.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I did a little investigating on Green Valley Sanitary. If you want, I can mention a few things. Should I do that now?
If you'd like to, if it's short, if it's a longer statement,
It's
then
fairly short. I talked to the past president and the past secretary, and I've tried to get a hold of the current. That, by the way, that's the $125,000 for everybody else that's here. About 3/5 of the way down. Anyway, everybody's opinions, other than the current president, who I haven't been able to get a hold of, it looks like the project is probably dead. So I think we should consider removing that $125,000 at some point.
Okay. I can check with Black Hills Special Services, since they were doing the grant funding, and ask them what they know about it to solidify that. But if you're hearing that, I'll follow up on that.
Black Hills Special Services,
Or
Council of Local Governments.
Council of Local
yeah.
Governments. They're in the
Sid-
Special Services building.
Yeah.
So I apologize.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have her name too, so.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to get that in there. I know it seems to come up every time.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Just want to draw your attention to this, and we'll talk about it later in another agenda item. But on page 8, you'll notice that there are a couple of entries in red there which show overspent budgets. And just wanted to be sure that folks knew that those budgets were overspent without any authorization from the board. And in the case of the Croy Golf Course project, without an active agreement. And we'll talk about that later, but I just wanted to bring that out as part of the treasurer's report.
Is there a motion to approve the treasurer's report?
I'll move to approve.
Move to approve by Mullally. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Driscoll. Discussion on the motion. Hearing no discussion. All those in favor of the treasurer's report state by stating aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Okay. Now we move to item number 7, which is an informational item. Summary of results of the recent Black Hills USGS hydrologic budget and water availability study. It looks like Director Mullally, your name's on it, so if you want to do the introduction.
Okay, well, I'll just, let me get my agenda up here. So this is the summary of results that USGS recently did on the Black Hills hydrology. And I'm just going to turn it over to Mr. Mettler without any further ado.
You use your computer over there and plug in.
Actually, we should have the deck up
Oh, perfect.
right there.
Stand over here a minute.
I'll move this mic over so that you can talk. If you want to just give your name and
And this ties in, this isn't part of West Dakota Regional Water System, but it ties into what they're doing with the pipeline studies and the possibility of a pipeline from Missouri River to the western South Dakota.
Yeah, so I'm Colton Medler. I'm a hydrologist here at the Dakota Water Science Center. To give a little bit of background on this, we are working with West Dakota Regional Water System as part of like a feasibility study that looks into, assessing a need for Missouri River water in our neck of the woods here. So if you could, next slide. So our study area is focused just on, the Black Hills in South Dakota and Wyoming, whereas the previous study just mostly focused on the South Dakota side. But we also included Wyoming because that water recharges into those aquifers and a lot of it flows back into South Dakota. So what we did is we divided that whole area, from like Spearfish, Bellfish area all the way down to like Edgemont into 9 different smaller areas called sub-areas. And we did that because water that's recharged in each of these various zones isn't necessarily in contact with each other. So like if you're a water particle falling in sub-area 1, like in the Spearfish area, and if you're drawing water from a well in that area, you would not get that same water as you would like in the Rapid City area. So we just did this to basically get smaller budgets in each of these different sub-areas. And this is just an update to something that Dan and Janet Carter did in the 1990s and early 2000s. So if you could go to the next slide, we kind of looked at what's changed since that last study was done. So obviously our population has gone up quite a bit since then. So we estimated about almost 40% of a population increase since 1999. And you can see that this black line here up at the top, that's their population, and this vertical black line is the cutoff from that previous study. So you can see it's gone up quite a bit. In the Rapid City area especially is where most of that population growth has gone on. Next slide, please. So then what's also changed is the amount of precipitation that we're getting. So part of that previous study from 1931 to 1998, it averaged about 18.8 inches in the entire Black Hills region. And if you include the additional 23 years since that study was completed, it actually increases that average to about 19.4 inches. So it's actually getting a little bit wetter here in the Black Hills. Next slide, please. And then the other thing that's also changed is that how we permit water to these various aquifers. So you can see most of the permitting growth has been in the Madison Aquifer, which is at about 72,000 acre feet as of the end of 2022. Whereas, alluvial aquifers like along Rapid Creek, Spearfish Creek, et cetera, are number 2, and then Menalusa, number 3 at about 31,000 acre feet. I do want to make you all aware that this is not currently how much water is actually being used. This is just what is permitted that can be used. This is for the entire Black Hills region. So next slide, please. So what we were tasked with is, like how much water is coming into these aquifers and how much is leaving in each of these different subareas. So what our inflows were precipitation recharge, so like rain and things of that sort. They fall on the outcrops and then go into the aquifers. And then we also have to consider stream flow losses. So in a lot of areas in the Black Hills, you'll see areas where there's water in the creek, right? And then you go downstream maybe a mile and then it's completely dry. And that's because a lot of the times you have these where the creek flows over like the Madison and Merluce formations, it actually loses water directly into the aquifers. And that's actually a very large component of recharge in the Black Hills. And then the outflows from these various aquifers would be, withdrawals from wells, and then also spring flow, which is like the headwaters of Rapid Creek, and then the different artesian springs that flank like the eastern Black Hills. So you can think kind of like Cascade Springs down by Hot Springs. Next slide, please. So that first inflow component, that precipitation recharge, what we did is we estimated for the entire Black Hills is about 205,000 acre feet, which it's kind of hard for me to visualize what an acre foot is. So basically what we did is, packed full reservoir at its capacity, like typical operating capacity is about 55,000 acre feet. So you can think of that number of precipitation recharge, about roughly 4 Pactola reservoirs go into these various aquifers each year. And then just the component of that that's made up by the Madison and Menalusa aquifers is about 155,000 acre feet, or roughly 3/4 of that total. So the Madison and Menalusa, they constitute quite a bit of the total recharge in the Black Hills. And then greatest precipitation recharge we observed was in like the sub-area 1 up here, the Spearfish area, and then sub-area 9, where you kind of think by like Jewel Cave and areas north of there. And then the least precipitation recharge we saw was in sub-areas 6 and 7, and then southern Black Hills by like Fairburn and Buffalo Gap. Next slide, please. So then that other inflow component, the stream flow recharge, this is kind of the notorious picture that a lot of people show. This is along Box Elder Creek, where you can actually see a whirlpool starting, where water is actually starting to flow into the aquifer, kind of like water down the drain of a bathtub. And we estimated about 73,800 acre feet go into the Madison and Menalusa aquifers each year. And that's roughly 9% greater than what the previous study estimated. So that's part of that, it's getting a little bit wetter in this area, so that's why we're actually seeing more water flowing through the hydrologic system in the Black Hills. Next slide, please. And then this is breaking it out by the different sub-areas. What I think is really cool about this slide, and the stream flow recharge component is this like kind of yellow cross-hatched area. So you can see in areas like sub-area 1, precipitation recharge is the dominant. So you see that fraction of the pie there from the stream flow recharge is pretty small. Then as soon as you get to the sub-areas along the eastern flank of the Black Hills, like 2 through 7, so like Whitewood, Sturgis, Rapid City, Buffalo Gap, you start to see that the stream flow recharge makes up a significant portion of the total recharge in those sub-areas, and actually, in most of them, makes up the majority of the recharge. So I think that just really highlights how important those streams are to these various aquifers, especially along the eastern flank of the Black Hills. Next slide, please. And this is the first outflow component. This is the well withdrawals. We broke it out, by the total withdrawals for all aquifers, and then we broke it out by aquifer, and that's this graph here on the right. So you can see the total withdrawals. You can see the variance from year to year, from 2003 to 2022. You can see it fluctuates quite a bit there, but on average it's about 50,000 acre feet, so slightly less than 1 Pactola reservoir. Each year, and between that 20-year period, we saw a minimum of 46,000 and a maximum of 53,000 acre feet. And a lot of that has to just do with, what are the precipitation conditions each year. So like 2019, you'll notice there's a low. And that's because that was an extremely wet year. It was actually the wettest year we've had on record. So you can see that year-to-year precipitation really affects how much water we use in the area. And then this is the estimates that we got from this were about 33% greater than the previous study. So they estimated about 37,600 acre feet were were withdrawn from various aquifers in the Black Hills. Next slide, please. This is just breaking it out, like similar to that stream flow recharge. This is breaking out how much water is used by aquifer in each of those sub areas. So you can see that the colors change depending on which sub area that you're in. And obviously the Rapid City area, sub area 4, uses the most water from aquifers. So you can see, like, especially sub area 4, we get a pretty good amount of our water from the Madison, Minnelusa, and then alluvial aquifers. Whereas, sub area 6, for example, gets almost all of it primarily from Precambrian aquifers, like for like the Custer area. Next slide, please. And then the last outflow component is spring flow discharge from the Madison, Minnelusa aquifers. So you can see, like, Rhodes Fork is a good example, like the headwaters of Rapid Creek. Or you can think of things like Cascade Springs down by Hot Springs. And we estimated that on average, aquifers discharge about 166,100 acre feet from these springs each year, which, if you can recall that, that's like roughly 3 Pactola reservoirs. So that's a pretty significant amount of water coming out of these springs each year. And that's about 15% greater than what the previous study estimated. And it's about 3 times greater than current well withdrawals. Next slide, please. So this led us to, now we can compare, now we know about how much water is going into these aquifers. We know about how much we're taking out each year. So, the amount that we're taking out each year is about roughly 1 Pactola reservoir. And if you lump precipitation and streamflow recharge into each other, you get roughly about 5 Pactola reservoirs. So current withdrawals are about 1/5 of the total amount that we get on average each year. And then if you remember kind of from that one slide where I was showing, where the Madison aquifer is the most appropriated, if you remember the total appropriations are about 176,800 acre feet, roughly 3 Pactola reservoirs. So if we were taking out all that aquifer, or all the water out of those aquifers that we are permitted to, it'd be roughly 3/5 of what we get into the aquifers each year. Next slide, please. So then we compared, for the various aquifers in the different sub areas, because, like, you recall what I was saying, like sub area 1, the amount of water that's going into that area, or the water that's going into that area is not going to be withdrawn from, like, the Rapid City area. So what we did is we compared for the Madison and Minnelusa aquifers. In each sub area, we compared how much water is being taken out to the amount that's going in to the aquifers. So you can see in that top table there, if you compare the maximum yearly well withdrawals to the recharge, the highest usage is in the Rapid City area, sub area 4, but that's only about 56% of what's being currently recharged. Whereas if you look at total yearly appropriations, so that's that number that we could take out but we aren't, you'll see that sub areas 4 and 8, especially the Rapid City area, it actually exceeds the amount that's going into the aquifer in that region. So then we can compare it for the other aquifers as well. You compare the maximum well withdrawals between 2003 and 2022 as a percentage of the yearly recharge. You can see that sub area 4 is definitely the most used. You can see the Deadwood's about 77%. Minnetonka is about 41%, and the Indian is over 100%. And most of the other aquifers in the various other sub areas, aren't more than 50%. And this is total appropriations expressed as a fraction of the average yearly recharge. So you can see again, sub area 4, you get several numbers that are exceeding 100%. So if we were taking out all the water that we were permitted to, it would be exceeding the amount that's going into those aquifers. And the other thing we did is that, you can't just consider only the water that's going in each year. You have to consider the water that's already in the aquifer, so then we could call that storage. So the previous study estimated about 256.3 million acre feet are stored in the various aquifers in the Black Hills, and we updated that number to include Wyoming. That includes about 356.9 million acre feet, and that's a lot of water. But you would have to remember, that, next slide please, that not all that water is high quality, especially as you get away from the Black Hills. The water quality tends to just decrease. You can see that in these two maps here, whereas the one on the left here is the water temperature, You can see where it gets to be the darker colors as you get away from the Black Hills. That's water temperature increasing pretty greatly. You know, and sometimes it's over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, especially as you get past, you know, Box Elder and stuff. So that's pretty hot water. And the other component is, that's this map here on the right, is these dots correlate with how much, you know, dissolved material is in the water. So you can see as you get away from the Black Hills, the amount of material that gets dissolved into the water starts to increase. So it's not only is the water hot, but it can also be pretty salty, and that, you know, presents some challenges for treatment. So just to kind of recap what we talked about here, you know, our population's increased by about 40%. It's getting a little bit wetter in the area, which is good. But we're also seeing, you know, the amount of permits applied for in each aquifer is also starting to increase. So we're starting to rely more and more on groundwater. For our budget, you know, we calculated the average yearly precipitation increase by about 0.6 inches per year. So the amount of water going into the aquifers from, you know, precipitation is starting to increase. Whereas, you know, if precipitation is increasing, your stream flow is also increasing. So you're getting more and more stream flow recharge as well. And the outflows, our spring flow also increased, which is a, you know, large component of the budget like we saw. And the well withdrawals, you know, about 33% greater than what the previous study estimated. So, but if you think about this in drought conditions, like how would each of these different budget components be affected? So, you know, in a drought, our precipitation, our stream flow recharge would decrease, our spring flow would decrease, but one thing that happens that we observed is that your well withdrawals typically increase during a drought. Which is like, it's kind of one of those things that, you know, everything else goes down, but water use goes up. So it's just kind of one thing to consider here, during droughts. But that is the talk. Does anybody have any questions or? Yeah, go ahead.
How do you measure outflow from the aquifers?
From well withdrawals or from the springs?
Well, I guess when you're looking at how much is basically simply how much is going in, how much is coming out. How do you measure how much is coming out? Do the water systems monitor that?
Yep.
And
So
you get that?
Yep. A lot of them, those systems for like the larger scale use, they have to report their water usage. Like Rapid Valley Sanitary has to report how much water they're taking out each year to the state. The state provided that data to us, and you know, we basically summed each large system's water usage by year, and that's how we got that water use chart.
And then the water going in would be from precipitation, basically?
Yes, and stream flow. Like, you know how we have various stream flow
So the
gauges
stream
around
flow
aquifers?
gauges, that's part of the equation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have an estimate for private wells?
We do not, because we do not know exactly how many wells are still like currently active of those domestic wells. That's actually a really big challenge that we have, you know, with the state databases and stuff. We can get kind of a grasp on how many total wells there are, but you know, we don't really know, like, well, how many are currently still active, how much are they withdrawing, you know, things of that sort. So that's definitely a component to this that we did not include, but that, you know, that we acknowledge.
So your stream flow would be dependent both on precipitation and spring flow?
Yes, absolutely. Because a lot of those streams, they get their base flow, so, you know, like their year-round flow is primarily from groundwater discharging at the higher elevations in the Black Hills, and that water flows to the eastern Black Hills.
So a lot of spring flow is coming out of one aquifer and going into another?
So a lot of those springs that are on like the limestone plateau area of the Black Hills, so you kind of think like, you know, like Spearfish Canyon and to the west there, a lot of those aquifers discharge water up there, and then it flows across, you know, those igneous and metamorphic rocks that make up the Black Hills, you know, like Black Elk Peak, granite, and stuff like that. They flow across the Black Hills, and they come over to the eastern flank of the Black Hills, where they lose their stream flow into like the Madison and Medusa aquifers. So the water's kind of like recycled in a way.
Is water use in the hills more dependent on groundwater or surface water?
It depends on where you are, like especially like if you're like in the Custer area, they rely mostly on groundwater. because they don't have a lot of surface water resources up there. You know, like in the Rapid City area, we can rely more on surface water because we have regulations along Rapid Creek from, you know, like Pactola Reservoir and things of that sort. But I've noticed a lot of the smaller users, especially in the Black Hills, rely a lot more on groundwater.
And that's what this study is just simply groundwater.
Just groundwater, yes.
In the older School of Mines study in the West Dakota Regional Water System presentations, a lot of times they show this graph of time, years on the x-axis, and then water usage going up as population increases. Are you familiar with that one? Then they have
Yep.
3 lines. One is wet year, one is drought, one is normal. How does this, if you took this, what you learn now, how does that update that chart just generally? Are we in a similar situation where we're taking out more than we're putting in during drought conditions?
So it's a little bit of apples to oranges with like how they calculated it, because how they did it is they did water use per person per day, and they, you know, estimated what population would be and then just extrapolated out. You know, ours is just actual water usage, which I don't think that they had that data available at that time. So, you know, they just would use somebody like Rapid City. You know, they know the population of Rapid City and they know how much total water was used. So they would just divide the total amount of water used by the number of people. So you get like 100 gallons per person per day or something. But what we found out is that, you know, it varies quite a bit. Like 2019, the water use per person per day would be much lower than, you know, in a really dry year, like say like this year. So it really just depends. And that would be like kind of the next phase of the, you know, follow-up studies that we'd like to do.
Okay, so I guess what I'm wondering is, it's mentioned in the introduction to your study in several places you've worked with them on this, and I'm just wondering what comes out of this that they're gonna use, or are there the conclusions yet to be drawn?
So I think the main thing that they're probably taking away is that some of the aquifers, the amount that's permitted currently exceeds what's going in the various sub-areas. I think that's probably what they're using mostly as their justification. You know, not necessarily that that water is actually being taken out right now, but that it could be in the future.
Okay, so you're not really working with them too much. The study is kind of
It's an independent
on
study.
its own.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, USGS doesn't have any vested stake. You know, we're not going to say whether you should or shouldn't do anything.
One more question on these sub areas.
Mm-hmm.
Do they communicate with one another? Like, is that, did
Like
you?
groundwater flowing across
Yeah.
the boundaries. So they were drawn to kind of minimize that influence, but yeah, of course, there's definitely groundwater flowing from one area into another, and that's extremely difficult to account for. But yeah, we acknowledge that that's a component of it.
Because at one time, somebody told me that the aquifers up north were doing better than to the east and south. Is that true?
So better is kind of a relative term. I would just say that they receive a lot more recharge up there because the recharge areas for like the Madison and Looser are a lot larger than they are in the eastern flank of the Black Hills. So I don't know if you could go back to one of my early slides there where I can kind of demonstrate that. Yeah, that slide works. So you can see sub-area 1 here, it's this big sub-area up here. You can see this kind of like these two purplish colored. So that's the Madison and that's the Minaloosa. You can see that that area in sub-area 1 is really large. Whereas if you look at that same colors, but you look in sub-area 4 here, you can see the recharge areas are much smaller. So the amount of precipitation that can fall and recharge aquifers here is significantly less than what can recharge aquifers up in the Spearfish area. You know, so they have a lot more water available up there than we do along the eastern flank of the Black Hills.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. I think there was a question
Yeah.
back there.
Does anybody in the public have a quick question they would like to ask? You in the back, sir?
Given everything you observed, what does that mean for head pressure on some of the springs we have? What's the increasing number of permits or just varying levels of infiltration you saw have anything implications for head pressure on the artesian well springs?
Of course, and you know, like year-to-year precipitation variations as well. Like, right now versus 2019, the head in each well and these springs is considerably different because water levels are a lot lower. There's various observation wells around the Black Hills that monitor, like water levels in the various aquifers, and we're not below, where we were like in the early 2000s drought. But certainly as, pumping increases and, drought conditions persist, the water levels in these aquifers would start to decline, and then, the head pressure in springs and wells would also start to decline. So like right now versus 2019, head pressures are definitely a lot lower.
John in the back.
Just one quick question, are you seeing more variability in those weather patterns in terms of like dry and wet cycles, and so?
Yeah, so
What
if you
is
can, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt
No,
your
go
question. Could you go back to one of the early slides where I was talking about how precipitation's changed since the hydrology study was completed? But that's a great question, and yeah, so that's what this chart, or this little graph over here kind of demonstrates. So basically what we did is the blue and red numbers, basically you take the long-term average and you subtract that from each year's precipitation. So these blue areas where precipitation really exceeds the long-term average, whereas the red are, where it's below. So the red areas would be kind of like a drought, whereas the blue would be wet. So you can see since the hydrology study was completed, we had this early 2000s drought followed by some really wet years, and then we'd have a dry year or two, and then it's really up and down. Whereas before, it was kind of like we'd have 5-6 year periods of dry and then wet, dry and then wet. And then the last 20 years or so have been really up and down. The extreme wets and sometimes extreme dries.
Has the USGS published your data?
Yes, it's all
And so
publicly
it's-
available
It's in
online.
a package that we could read and see?
Yep, absolutely.
Can we come by?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or is it online?
It is online, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you find me after this, I can show you where it is online, so you can read it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is this that like 100-page thing? Is that?
It is
okay.
long, yes.
Is this figure in there?
Which one? This one?
Yeah, what that slide is.
Both
it?
of these figures are in
Okay.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's long.
So this figure, I didn't really talk about this during the slide, but this is like how precipitation varies throughout the region. So you can see like the blue areas here, like in the northern Black Hills, so that'd be like the Lee Deadwood area. They get about 30 inches of rain per year. Whereas you make your way south and then east, and like away from the Black Hills, it really starts to decline. So like in the Edgemont area, they're getting roughly like 16, 17 inches of rain per year. Rapid City area is getting about 18. So it just really highlights how much it varies, throughout the region. So that's, again, like why sub-areas 1 and 2 get so much recharge, is because the precipitation is just much higher up there.
Does the recharge map take any, like infiltration rates or land use types into consideration, or it's just straight precip?
So I can talk with you more about that afterwards. It's this concept called like basin yields. Basically, you use the amount of water that's going in from precipitation, then how much is leaving from stream flow, and you use that relationship to basically calculate how much water is going into the aquifer.
Seeing no other questions from the group, I'd like to thank you for the presentation.
Absolutely.
Okay. Item number 8 is an informational item about the Black Hills Watershed Collaborative, and that is Director Young's item. So I'll leave the floor to you.
All right, thank you. I'd like to invite some good friends up to talk to us all about the work that they're doing in the watershed, purely informational. And I'd like to welcome Chuck Mordhorse, Chris Silver, Lori Brown, and Hans Stevenson.
Thanks, everybody. I'm Hans Stephenson, and yes, we're here with the Black Hills Watershed Collaborative. It's a pretty new group. It's born out of some things that have happened over the past couple of years, but we're a newly established partnership between federal and state agencies, as well as landowners, local and national conservation organizations. And kind of our mission is maybe somewhat overlapping with yours. It's you know, quality of water, quantity of water, and what we've seen, you know, on the ground is that, you know, there's a problem with a lot of our stream systems, and, you know, a lot of our work is, you know, initially focusing on our headwater streams, where there's a lot of degradation, drought stress, and reduced water retention on the landscape. And the local agencies, like the Game and Fish, as well as the national agencies like the Forest Service, they've got a willingness to do some work to help fix those stream systems and do some restoration work, but they're limited by their capacity and ability to do that work. And you know, there's some volunteer energy out around this issue of doing those stream restorations in those headwater stream systems, but the overall capacity to see, you know, a lot of momentum and scale in terms of driving that restoration to a larger scale to reverse some of these trends in degradation in those stream systems is lacking. And so that's kind of where we came in, is kind of a group to try to fill some of that gap in capacity and assist however we can. A little bit of history about where the collaborative came from. The Northern Hills Ranger District, specifically of the Forest Service, has been, you know, kind of driving a lot of low-tech process-based restoration projects. If you don't know what that is, it's just a very you know, simple, not highly engineered restoration process. You know, implementation of things like beaver dam analogs, things like that, to reduce or to start to improve stream condition and jumpstart natural processes that then can maintain the health of those streams and riparian areas. They came to us at the Black Hills Fly Fishers. I'm also the co-president of the Black Hills Fly Fishers, looking for some volunteers to help on some of their projects, specifically Silver Creek, which is a tributary of Rapid Creek in the Rochford area. And that project really took off. There was a lot of volunteer energy there. Other conservation groups like National Wild Turkey Federation, Mule Deer Foundation, a bunch of other groups jumped in, Nature Conservancy. We had people from all over starting to show up and volunteer. And that project really got a lot of people excited within the agency, Forest Service, to do more of this type of work and scale that work. But then again, like I said, they're limited by their capacity. They don't have the man hours to be able to keep developing these projects. And so out of this partnership of volunteer groups and different conservation groups, you know, the conversation started with agency, like, why not have a collaborative organization that can kind of take all these partners, make sure we're all working together rather than working, you know, scattergun. Let's pool our efforts and work together and maximize that scale and potential for this type of restoration in the Black Hills. And that's where we came and were formed this year under a fiscal sponsorship at the Black Hills Area Community Foundation, just to get ourselves started without a lot of headaches in terms of starting a 501c3 right away, which that is likely the next step down the road. But we wanted to focus on that momentum that's already gotten started, and capture some of that energy to try to continue this work at a meaningful scale. And so there's a lot of work already underway. Like I said, there's a project at Silver Creek, but now there's a couple of things happening that are really helping drive this momentum a little bit further. There's 2 agreements that are authorized under the Tribal Forest Protection Act that are bringing crews from the Forest Service, but more importantly, South Dakota tribes together to implement stream restoration in the Black Hills. And there's currently 6 miles of restoration planned for the 2026 field season and 8 miles planned for the 2027 field season. But here's where the capacity issue comes up again. Starting in 2028, there's really nothing permitted. There's no projects on the ground that have been developed beyond those field seasons, and we don't want to see that progress start to, you know, go backwards and run out of momentum. And so that's where Lori can kind of talk about where we're going next and how we're gonna aid that capacity to keep this momentum going. And if there's anything I left out, Lori, jump in.
So we, as Hans mentioned, from day one worked in lockstep with our federal and state agency partners and have built a lot of trust and friendships and collaboration with those partners. And the number one thing we hear back from them when we have these working group meetings is we need to move away from shotgun conservation projects where we have a mile of stream here, aspen regen here, some tree plantings there, and work towards these more holistic strategic action plans so that we can be greater than the sum of our parts, right? So they came to us after our January meeting and said, what we really need is this phased approach to an actual conservation roadmap for our watersheds. And that's what we have decided to take on for our 2026 big project, in addition to supporting the 6 miles of active restoration that we already have permitted and funding for, is developing these watershed assessments that identify areas of low-hanging fruit for restoration. So where do we get the most bang for our buck, essentially? Where can we put our efforts and time in a meaningful way on the ground, not just to do a habitat project here or there, but to do holistic watershed health restoration projects. So we're looking for, we have a contractor lined up, Anna Branch Solutions out of Utah State University to support this work. So we're looking for this year, taking that contract underway to bring on this partner to help us do that planning, that analysis, and get us to these watershed conservation roadmaps that partners can then buy into, and we can develop more shovel-ready projects for 2028 and beyond. Yeah. Do you?
No, I know that effort isn't gonna happen without some funding, and so, you know, we do have some funding available that we've gotten from the Community Foundation. Some of our partners, like Black Hills Fly Fishers and the National Wild Turkey Federation, are gonna be willing to step up and partner with us and do some matching funds. But as this effort continues to grow to support this initial GIS analysis and then future planning and implementation is probably gonna take some additional dollars, which we would welcome for, you know, from this group, if that's something you'd be willing to consider. I know that the initial discussions on some of this planning are anywhere from like the $65,000 range, which then that's just for the analysis, but we probably need some funds for capacity and implementation as well.
Hans, can I make a point?
Yeah.
I think one thing to think about is that the government is limited in the work that they can do. They're limited in their capacity, they're limited in their funding, and whatever they do needs to be a smart move. And this analysis of the watershed of Rapid Creek that we're looking at is going to make those dollars being spent more efficient. That they're gonna be able to spend those dollars in the right place at the right time for the right reasons. Right now, we don't know that. Right now, everyone's shooting from the hip and, you know, they call it random acts of restoration. And it doesn't get you anywhere. It might look good and you can say, yeah, we acclaim target, that's great. But it doesn't, there's no strategy to it. And that's what we're really working on with Anna Branch, to help us build strategy to be able to help the agencies be able to spend their dollars more wisely.
Yeah.
Can I get your name, sir, just for the record?
Yeah, you bet. My name's Chris Stover.
Chris Stover. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Chris.
Yep.
Yeah, we did our 1 mile up at Silver Creek, and that was great, and we all sang Kumbaya and patted ourselves on the back, and now we need to think about how we work most strategically and efficiently to get to a place where we actually have self-sustaining watersheds, not just a mile here and a mile there of projects. And sometimes it's gonna take volunteer days and Beaver Dam analogs and in-stream restoration. And one thing this analysis will help us do is also look at areas where that's not the most appropriate technique in the toolbox, and other techniques will be a better fit there, like grazing management or aspen regeneration or riparian vegetation recovery. So it helps us look at this holistic picture of all of the tools in the toolbox and put the right ones in the right spot.
Do you have a scope of work identified for this Anna branch that is available for, to us to look at, for example, as we go forward in some of our planning efforts?
I don't know if we're that far along. I know
Yeah.
Lori's been in discussions with them, and I think that's something we could definitely get
Yeah.
for consideration.
Our geographic scope of work would be the headwaters of Rapid Creek, essentially. So our headwater streams above Pactola. And then in terms of the analysis, they're gonna bring in, right, for look at biology, topography, and historic vegetation and things like that. So we have kind of a list of attributes we want them to bring in to put this analysis together for us.
How long do you think the study would take to complete if it were funded?
6 to 9 months.
So I've been trying to figure out what you're actually doing. Can you give some details, like you mentioned Silver Creek? I'm reading these priorities and it's not clear to me. Looks like something AI wrote.
Well, I guess one of the biggest things that first brought us all together was the identification of a need for beavers back in the Black Hills. And so a lot of our work is driven around where we can be most effective at restoring beaver habitat and creating self-sustaining systems for a keystone species in our watershed.
Yeah, and if you go to places like Silver Creek before we did the work, and that'd be something that we've done in the past, is we've done field trips to our field site. Be more than willing to host a field trip to Silver Creek, and there's some really good contrast there because you can go just above our work site and then go into the work site itself. But a lot of these streams, well, pretty much most of our streams in the Black Hills are highly incised, very straight, channelized streams, and Silver Creek was an example of that. I mean, the banks were up to my shoulder height, a little dribble of water down the middle, and this is slowing the water, reconnecting it with the floodplain, but using very low-tech, hand tool type implementation that slows that water down, reconnects water to the landscape, but then also starts to, over time, trap those sediments, grade the stream channel, bring it back up so it stays a little more permanently connected to the floodplain. But then as you re-wet the floodplain, then you can also make the riparian vegetation healthy again, which then hopefully keeps driving these natural processes to continue. Beavers maybe come back in because you've got better availability for willows, you've got better stream conditions, you've got aspens nearby, and then they maintain these stream systems in a way that hasn't really been done for 40, 50 years on most of these streams in the Black Hills.
And would this help the recharge of the aquifers?
It's definitely slowing the water down rather than running off the landscape as fast as possible. So I can't answer that. It's not my field of expertise, but it.
A couple of nodding heads.
They say yes.
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, yeah, it would, because if that water has more time in contact with the aquifer for it to seep in, then yeah, it could increase recharge.
These techniques are being used in the Southwest quite a bit with the intention of maintaining well elevations, recharging groundwater. Arizona, New Mexico, Southern Nevada.
Thank you.
Yes.
What percentage of the streams in the Black Hills area would be on private land versus public land? And on private land, what degree of cooperation, if any, have you received?
We've received quite a bit of cooperation on the private lands side of things, and I can't speak to I don't know what the actual percentages of private lands of riparian areas in the Black Hills. Maybe Nate does, he would know better than I.
I don't have a number for you.
But the first place that we started to test these practices was actually on ranches in our grasslands with livestock producers, because no one running cows in western South Dakota is going to say, I have too much water in my creek, or I have too much water for my cows. And so a big part of our initial pilot work with this was for livestock water availability and increase forage production in these riparian bottoms. So we get a lot of interest from ranchers. Is it everywhere? No, but I think that once you start having conversations about the benefits in terms of supporting more vegetation and more biomass and more water, there's not a lot of negatives from a private landowner standpoint. Does everyone want beaver on their property? No. Okay, fair enough. But there's a lot more benefit than there is drawback to doing stream restoration.
Yeah, on the Silver Creek project, there's landowners upstream and downstream. There was some initial kind of reluctance on the downstream landowners for the project, but after one of our field trips, that landowner came up and we walked him through the project area and kind of explained what we were doing. And by the end of the day, he was like, I've got some equipment at my house. If you need me to drive it up here, I'll drive up a little backhoe and help you do the work if you'd like. And then the folks just upstream from there are interested in doing that work. So that's something we don't have the capacity ourselves yet to do, but we do want to have the ability to assist private landowners that want to do this type of work on their property to take advantage of. There's programs out there that can find funding for those types of projects, and then maybe we can help coordinate people to implement the project for them. But that's definitely something we're considering.
Yeah. It is a cost share practice already with Game and Fish and with NRCS. So folks are already using those conservation cost share programs for this stuff as well.
You mentioned the GIS project. How are you identifying areas to do your work, and do you have criteria for these areas?
Well, right now, where we do our work is based on where we have NEPA clearance with the Forest Service to do our work. And so we're oftentimes tied to where there's existing activities in the Black Hills. So like Silver Creek got cleared partially because there was a timber harvest right before then. So the NEPA work was already done for it. And we want to move away from that model because that's not always what gets us the best result in terms of providing improved ecosystem services. So we want to move away from that, like work wherever there's a NEPA clearance to like be intentional about where we're putting our efforts and our time on the ground. And this GIS will inform that prioritization, but so will stakeholder engagement and stakeholder collaboration. And so that's where we bring in our Game, Fish, and Parks partners, our community members, landowners, and develop a criteria that's based off of not just the GIS analysis, but also the cultural carrying capacity for our work and where we want to see those impacts in our communities.
Thank you.
Not seeing any other questions. I'd like to thank you guys for your presentation.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, item number 9 is the sponsorship of the USGS Western South Dakota Hydrology Conference. It is in the packet. It is for $3,000. Is there anyone that wants to speak on that before from the hydrology conference?
Sure.
Do you want us to come up there?
You can come up here or just find a mic wherever you feel comfortable. Seems like everybody wants to come up today, so I think it's because of the wonderful crowd we have.
Different corner, stand by Dan. Or
Yep. Any place there.
That's fine.
like that. Okay. All right, I'm Jamie Howder. I'm with the U.S. Geological Survey.
I'm Jesse Wilkins. I'm with the South Dakota Department of Agriculture and Natural Resources Watershed Protection Program.
And we are both part of the planning committee of the Western South Dakota Environmental and Hydrology Conference. It's becoming a bit of a mouthful. So for those of you that might not be familiar with the conference, it brings together a collaboration of engineering professionals, academics like professors and students, governmental employees from federal, state to local levels, as well as just interested public members for a one-day conference. We have speeches throughout the day and then a poster session in the afternoon. We usually have about 200 people attend, and we always receive very positive feedback about the quality and content of the conference. The conference would not be possible without sponsorships, and West Dakota Water Development District has been a sponsor since its beginning, which was in 2002. So it's been hosted every year in April since then, except for in 2020. So we are here to request $3,000 to continue your sponsorship this year. As part of that sponsorship, you guys do receive acknowledgement in the abstract program and signage at the conference. Any board member is welcome to attend for free. And also a board member usually says a few words over lunch to introduce your organization and yourselves.
Is there a motion from the board to, for the $3,000?
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by McGregor to sponsor the USGS South Dakota Hydrology Conference. Discussion from the board? Yes, Dan?
I support this. I've been to these conferences, and I think it's money well spent.
Okay. Any other discussion from board members? Okay. Seeing none. All those in favor all those in favor to sponsor the USGS Western South Dakota Hydrology Conference in the amount of $3,000, state by saying aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed, same side. Okay. Item passes.
Thank you guys. I did print out some schedules if anyone wants to see the program. Sorry for the small font.
Thank you.
Thank
Get
you
lunch
guys.
out of it.
You do get lunch and a lot of snacks.
I'm on a diet.
I just want education.
Okay. Item 10 is sponsorship of 2026 Earth Day Expo. So last year they had come to us wanting to know if we wanted to sponsorship. It is at Western Dakota Tech. It would be the same sponsorship that we had last year of $1,000 of the gold member. The reason why the budget is $1,100 is because materials, printing, candy, as some of the other members that sat in the booth said candy might help for people to come and talk to us. And so I put in a number of $100 in there as a placeholder, as a not to exceed. But pretty much we had good attendance from there. So this was kind of put in, and they sent the notice right after I had put in the supplement. So there is probably a little bit more information than what is provided. Right now, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay. Moved by Young, is there?
Second.
Seconded by Care. Discussion on the motion?
I went to this event last year. It is really fantastic, and I encourage all of you to attend. It is definitely worth your time. All kinds of really amazing community groups getting together, and it's definitely worthwhile.
Any other comments from any of the board members? Okay. Hearing nothing, all those in favor state by stating aye.
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 All those opposed?
Aye,
One opposed? You want it on the record, Dan?
yes.
Opposed by Director Mullally. Okay, item passes. Okay, item number 11, information about 319 project update. We have Nathan Anderson here from the Danner. If you would like to come up and kind of give a brief explanation of what 319 is, and then we can kind of tie in where we have been working together.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to thank you all for inviting me to be here. I guess let's start with a show of hands. How many of you guys have heard of this 319 watershed protection project? Yeah, all right. We got quite a few people. That's good. So, I guess a little backstory. EPA has been putting pressure on state organizations to protect waters that are currently not impaired. And we have identified a couple watersheds in our state that need protection. Two of them being Rapid Creek and one being Spearfish Creek. So with 319 Clean Water Act funding, we're partnering with West Dakota to protect these pristine waters from impairments, and the impaired waters in the watershed we're trying to fix them as well. So right now, we are doing some cost share funding on SRAM in ag-related aspects of this watershed, and we're doing a few plans for a select few projects to get this watershed protection project off of the ground. We're gonna have a press release coming out here soon, right?
Yep.
Nice. And yeah, so we're just getting it started. EPA Region 8, this will be the third watershed protection project, the second being Spearfish Creek, and the first one being the Bitterroot River in Montana. So it's exciting stuff, and I look forward to working with you guys. Are there any questions? Oh, that was a lot. Yes, sir.
Is anybody looking at the watershed protection for the Piedmont and Whitewood areas on the recharge sites?
So currently no. Our scope of work with this 319 project is the Rapid Creek watershed. I do have a figure here, but that does not include those areas. I can find it for you. But yes, no, unfortunately not. Hopefully in the future we can look at that, but as of right now, no. Figure right here.
Any other questions for Mr.? Yep.
Yeah, you also mentioned impaired bodies of water as part of the survey.
Yes, sir.
So with that, I mean, is there a 3D list nexus on this?
Yeah. So Department of Ag and Natural Resources, we have an integrated report. You can look it up online with WQMap. Basically brings up a map of South Dakota. Your red ones are impaired bodies of water. Rapid Creek itself is actually impaired in segments 3, 4, and 5 for E. coli, TSS. But as of right now, your segments 1 and 2, so basically your headwaters to Rapid City, are unimpaired for anything. So our protection would go.
So that'd be a 3195 there.
No. So yeah.
You're assessing these as unimpaired. So
Yeah, so
establishing protection so they don't wind up on a list.
Yes. Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Any other questions from the board?
Just a question, segments 3, 4, and 5 are approximately where?
So 3 is like Canyon Lake to, say, Farmingdale. So like 3, 4, and 5, basically Canyon Lake to where it dumps into the Cheyenne.
And that includes through Rapid City itself?
Yep, through Rapid City. And that's where a lot of your non-point source pollution comes from, your ag practices in the farther reaches downstream, and just your general city activities. And we look to address this.
Yes, Mr. Bialotta in the back.
Yeah. If memory serves me right, the West Dakota Water Development District did a study on where that E. coli was coming from, and we found vast amount coming from right where the discharge site for the water treatment plant was in the valley from the city of Rapid, because we found out they were not using UV during the winter months, which was basically dumping untreated water into Rapid Creek.
When, I'm Bob Williams, we actually did do that sampling, and West Dakota Water funded it, found that between Canyon Lake Spillway and the East St. Patrick's Creek Bridge, there was significant E. coli problems. We found that the upstream above Canyon Lake, that location was sampled, and the only things we had were ruminants and dogs, actually, in the DNA. No human pollution, to the west. If you get a chance, Dan, well, have you ever seen this?
Talking about the dog park?
Yeah,
Up above?
I mean,
Yeah, I've heard about it.
have you, would you like the study? Do you still have the study down?
It's on our website, I believe. It's called
It's the E. coli
source
study.
DNA source pollution or something. Where is it? Actually looked at the DNA to determine where it came from. There was a lot of human activity between Canyon Lake and St. Pat. I don't think it included the wastewater treatment plant. I think that was their own sampling, but I believe it's on our website.
We sampled, oh, Dan.
Pardon me?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Ron?
Yeah, just maybe an information item there, Bob. One of the first, the first two things that West Dakota will be engaged in with this 319 study are these protection plans. And so we're gonna be hiring a contractor to do those things, and one of the items that contractor will be doing is, as part of their investigation, is a literature search. And we also have that item called out we will have it called out specifically, as an item that they need to review as part of their overall evaluation of where things are happening, so to speak, in those two reaches that we're gonna work on. Just like the other study that the board funded, where we looked at the impervious areas, in the various sub-watersheds in Rapid City. That would be an item that they would be looking at as well. So that, as well as the host of studies that over the years School of Mines has been, or the USGS has been involved in. So hopefully all those bases will get covered and kind of feed into these REACH-specific protection plans.
Jesse, you had
I just wanted to make a note that the E. coli standard is seasonal, so it only applies from May 1st to September 30th, the recreation season. Whether that's a good thing to a person or not. So impairments would be caused by samples collected during that May 1st to September 30th season. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Director Driscoll?
I guess I'd ask Galen Hogestraat back here. Galen, you'd been pretty involved with some sampling programs with City of Rapid City to basically evaluate efficiency of some of these stormwater, water quality improvement facilities that they've constructed, and also looking at trying to better determine sources of bacteria in Rapid Creek. Any insights that you could provide from that work?
Yeah, sure. I'm sure the nearest mic is here. Galen Hogestraat, USGS, and as Dan mentioned, we as in USGS has partnered with the City of Rapid City on some stormwater monitoring efforts in the past decade. I was involved with a lot of that sampling work, and just kind of the gist of it is we're looking at some of their stormwater control structures like wetlands, detention ponds, things meant to capture water, improve water quality. And I think just some big takeaways from our research over the years is those things do a great job of knocking down TSS sediments. Bacteria is a trickier one to get a hold of on a lot of those conventional treatment measures, and that sometimes bacteria can just actually grow during the non-runoff times and then get flushed out during the big runoff time. So bacteria is always the tricky one to get a hold of. But yeah, I do recall some of the source tracking work that when that was going on in I think that was circa 2016, 2018 thereabouts, and we were we weren't directly involved with that, but I was kind of aware of those efforts and recall some of the takeaways from that time. So really interesting work, and I think we should try to use that for anything we do moving forward. Yep.
One more, Bob, real quick.
Once again, I'm Bob Williamson. What I'd like to suggest is that if there's a way to increase the number of sampling, we had a plan that was voted down after the first sampling effort, when we discovered there was so much water that was being polluted north, or up the stream toward the west, up to Canyon Lake. In that reach of about 8 miles, it was picking up a huge amount of bacteria and then it was added to when the waste treatment plant provided additional information, to where we actually sampled below the waste treatment plant downstream, and so. I guess I haven't a final throw, but I would suggest making sure that we get another chance to do that.
Seeing that there are no other questions, thank you, Nathan, for the report out. I appreciate it. Okay, moving on to item 12. Proposed rescission of an agreement in remaining budgeted funds for dry land erosion control projects as shown in the 3/2/2026 assistance summary. This is to include Star Village Project 26-01, in addition to the South Dakota School Mines and the Cornerstone projects. So in the packet, if you are looking at the packet, it would be on page, apologies, on page 8, and that would be the first project in the 2026 project, so the collaborative erosion control. It would be then in the 2025 projects, it would be the collaborative erosion control. So the bottom two for 2025, and that is Director Coe. I'll turn the floor over to you.
Okay, thanks, Chairman. This is going to be a little bit of a story, and I'll try and make it as succinct as I can without going through the entire history of how we got to this point. I think it was probably about 5 to 6 years ago, maybe, that we began, the board
Mr.
began.
Chairman, point of order, if I may, shouldn't we have a motion to actually do this before we launch into a big discussion?
That would probably the information first?
Pardon?
Before we, I guess I thought maybe you needed the information before we made any motions.
Well, we can have that after the motion, I think, in support of the motion.
Okay.
If you'd like to start off by making the motion.
So moved.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Young. Okay, so the motion on the floor is to rescind the agreements remaining budgeted funds for dry land erosion control projects as shown on 3.2 project assistance summary. This includes Star Village Project 26-001 in addition to the South Dakota School of Mines and the Cornerstone projects. It is open to discussion, and I'll leave it to the proposer of the motion to give his information or his concern.
Okay, like I said, this has got a long history to it, and I'll try and be succinct. 5 or 6 years ago, the board got involved with what was going to be an experimental effort to do some landscaping and some grass seeding, essentially, on some exposed shale slopes on the Star Village site. And that's continued as we've moved through the years, and we've actually added projects along the way in the exact same format, where a site is picked without any particular criteria used for that site being chosen, other than the fact that these all that we've been working on in the past have been on exposed shale slopes, and many of the slopes fairly steep. So that's been the commonality, and all of a sudden we seem to have kind of been drawn into what's been a continual progression of doing these projects on a repetitive basis. They don't have a great deal of accountability to any kind of a design plan. There's not really any kind of criteria used to pick these sites. They're essentially been picked by, 1 or 2 individuals going along the way. They all have more or less a conceptual budget that's hard to track. As we've seen, even in our most recent budget report, there's no accountability to any real spending. We have spending occurring where there are no projects, no agreements in place. We don't have any kind of measurable benefits to demonstrate to the general public why we're doing these projects in terms of reduced sediment yield to Rapid Creek, which is the water body of concern. And so we don't have any quantification there. We don't have any real way of understanding, we don't have very good accountability on how we do the procurement of all the things that go into these projects. We've spent north of $50,000 on these projects since they were initiated. And so we've made efforts primarily beginning more intensively in the late fall of 2024, when the then board and executive committee brought forward and passed, a proposal that we would sunset all of these projects at the end of December 2025. The reason that we put that forward was to allow for a reconfiguration primarily of the agreements, so that we had a better handle on how the project partners were going to contribute, what skin they were really going to have in the game, because most of these, basically all these projects right now have just been funded by West Dakota with very minimal inputs of in-kind match from project partners. Well, that's gone along since December of 24, all through 25. Nothing really happened except that we continued to chase these projects down in the exact same form, where we are attempting to do landscaping and improve property, on these project collaborator properties. So we probably should have done this a little bit earlier in the cycle, but because it started out essentially as an experiment and just sort of morphed into a way of doing business, we didn't really do our due diligence, in my opinion. So as we look at the South Dakota statutes, water development districts are allowed to, or they're statutorily authorized to build water resource projects. Now, in my mind, I have a really serious question about whether these projects are in fact water resource projects. We'll talk about that later on in the agenda, but it's probably not as important for this topic, this particular agenda item, as it will be for item number 15. But anyway, water development districts are authorized and statutorily authorized to build water resources projects or assist with water resource projects. Further, if we look at another statute in the South Dakota Code in Chapter 46, and these are shown in the packet on pages 16 and 17. The first one, where water resources projects are defined as 46A-2-4, subsection 14. And then the next section that I'm talking about is South Dakota Codified Law 46A-3E-7. It tells how a water resources, a water development district can participate with people in terms of assistance. And so this is the critical one in relation to why we need to, as a board, rescind these projects and essentially start over on how we might be participating with them. If you look at SDCL 46A-3E-7, subsection 2, which is highlighted in bold, and I'll just read it because I think it's important. It says direct beneficiaries shall finance those phases of water resource development that provide water for their use or that protect or enhance the value of their property. And so all of these projects that we've been engaged with so far, these landscaping projects where we try and grow grass on these steep slopes, essentially we're improving property for these landowners that own the properties. And so the way that it appears pretty direct in the statutes is that they need to provide, the resources that are going to be directed towards those property improvements. That is, if we as a water development district are building those projects. And that's what we've been doing so far. So I think we need to get a handle on this and rescind these agreements, rescind the existing budget amounts, so that we can then go back and start over again, which we kind of tried to start back in late fall and winter of December in 2024, but never really got accomplished in 25. We can participate with these people if they come to us and they say, hey, we want to do something, we think it's going to have benefit. We can then evaluate each project on its own merits and participate with them, and perhaps even spend the same amount of money with them if we give them monies to do these projects and assist them. But we as a water development district really are not supposed to be in the business of building these projects that benefit these private landowners in the model that we're building right now. So I'm not saying we shouldn't be doing these projects necessarily. I have my own personal opinion about that. But as a board, I think we really need to start over again and have these come to us in a different way other than us being the project originator and essentially the builder. So that's the crux of it on this this item.
Any questions from the board on the item as proposed by the Dan?
On the letter from the attorney that I read, we are authorized to do, I think it's right here. Water Development District are authorized to operate as primary design and construction contractors.
We are.
Am I misreading that? Or?
No, we are.
Okay.
Exactly. We are authorized to build, assist, design, construct, whatever, water resources projects. Okay, so I'm kind of in wonderment about whether these erosion landscaping projects are water resource projects, but it's really not important to this question because even whether or not they're water resource projects or not, you know, if we assume they're water resource projects, then the people who are the direct beneficiaries are supposed to be paying the bill that benefit the improvement to their lands. If they're not water resources projects, then we should not be doing the building. We could assist them if we so chose as a board, but we can't be the project essentially builder. So no, I'm not disagreeing at all with what the attorney has said. It identifies that fact in statute as well. We just are, I think, I don't know which way, how to say it, we're upside down on how we're doing these projects. We need to assist these people, give them funds if we think the project merits funds, but we as a water development district, we are not in the business of doing those projects the way they're done now, and we're essentially out of bounds in terms of the way the statutes read, as far as who pays for what. Because we are the primary sponsor and builder of these projects. We have to do it a different way.
Okay, I guess I'll listen to more of the discussion. I believe in majority vote, and we voted for these projects, and I'm not tracking whether they're past their deadlines or not, so that would make a difference to me, but.
Well, that particular point is germane to two projects. It's germane to the Star Village project, and it's germane to the LaCroix Links project. Money has been spent on those projects when we didn't have agreements. And it continues to be spent on the LaCroix Links project, even as late as last week. We do not have a project agreement on that, but we have funds being expended there. So that's really out of bounds.
Thank you.
I'll clarify on that count, and I can ask our administrator to weigh in. Those are expenses that were incurred prior to the end of December of 2025, and basically the billing was not applied until after the turn of the year. Larry, you've handled the bills. All of the efforts on those occurred before that. I guess a further clarification that's relative to LaCroix. On Star Village, we did vote to continue that project, at our January meeting, and we did have minor expenditures during February. The expenditures amounted to the rental of a dump trailer and a pickup truck, and then some diesel fuel for the work that was authorized per our vote at our January meeting.
I was unaware that these invoices that I just recently paid on Monday was last year. The previous set, I applied to the previous year, but that still shows them negative. So whether they were applied in 2025 or actually done in 2026, it still is what the number is shown here.
The largest of those was the donation that for the services provided by the wildland fire crew. You know, this is something that's going to come up during my update, but you know, as it turned out, the best way that they can work for us is, you know, they don't bill anybody, but if we're inclined to provide a donation, we can. And so they provided a rundown of what typically they would bill if they were billing for fighting a fire. And so, you know, that amounted to a $5,000 donation that was for 6 days of effort that included LaCroix, the School of Mines, Cornerstone, Star Village, and all of those occurring before the end of December, mostly, a week before Christmas and then between Christmas and New Year's. So, you know, those dates were listed in the paperwork that they had provided, and actually when I sent you a spreadsheet with, you know, I denoted that.
That was
right,
2+ weeks ago.
So it's just that, you know, it took them a long time to get around to sending this out, and it, you know, it arrived, you know, to you late. But those expenditures were incurred, you know, during, you know, 2025.
Okay, they're still negative.
Yeah,
Yeah.
We can deal with that in whatever fashion.
I don't want to get sidetracked on the fact that we overspent budgets without authorization. I think it's more important that we focus on how we want to go forward with these projects in the future. And have the water board be providing assistance to projects based on their merit versus building projects that are questionable in terms of water resources projects. And then also are contrary, if they are water resources projects, they are contrary to South Dakota statute under 46A3E7, where the beneficiary of a project for land improvement pays for the project. So we really need to reinvent how we're doing these projects. It's pretty clear.
Chair? I think it just depends on what your definition of a water resource project is and who it benefits. I agree that there's no quantification of the impact of this project in revegetating these slopes, but in revegetating the slopes, we're not benefiting just that property owner. We're stopping sedimentation from getting into the watershed, and that's not specific to that property owner, it's specific to everybody. So I would disagree with that interpretation. There's no place in here, you know, one of the other things we've had a disagreement with is funding, helping government agencies such as the School of Mines. And in SDCL 38-8-63, it says part of the purpose is to furnish financial or other aid to any agency, governmental or otherwise. So that is not a reason not to fund a project in collaboration with the city or with the School of Mines. That's right there in the codified law.
Excuse me, just a moment before we go forward, you got to clarify. 38-8-63 applies to conservation districts, not water development districts.
Okay. Thank you. So we need to make the distinction between a conservation district and a water development district, and then also maybe a water conservancy district, as is in 32. Okay.
There's a whole lot of hierarchy that's housed under the South Dakota Resource Conservancy. It's all related to water. Conservation districts are not in that chapter. The water is all housed under the Resource Conservation District. And they are all about water resources projects. The definition of a water resources project is in your packet.
Right.
They are the water resources projects that the state legislature recognizes. They are of scale. And they're listed on page 17 under, I think it's 46A,
Yep.
1-2-1. So we kind of know what the legislature has in mind in terms of a water resources project. They are of scale, and they're meant to deliver water and regulate water, in a big way throughout the state. It may have not been possible for anybody, even though this went out weeks and weeks ago, to read the law review by John Davidson, but it gives a really good survey of what the whole genesis and nexus of both the the Resource Conservancy District is on a state level, and then in that hierarchy where water development districts fit. And there are other districts that are also in that chapter that are basically regulated and overseen by the Board of Water and Natural Resources. It's all about water. And so, again, I think it's in our best interest as a board to reinvent how we participate with these entities who are going to perhaps want to improve their land and provide some unquantified benefit to water quality. It isn't directly linked to a water resources project right now. If we as a board feel like it's something we should do, I don't have a problem with that in terms of how we would vote to go forward, but we have to reinvent how we're doing it. I don't think we're following the statutory regulations on how we do it. And so, along with many of the conversations that have been had over the years with the executive board and some of them here, the goal that we've always had is to have people come to us and ask for help, not to be necessarily always the proactive ones where we find a site, sell it to the landowner, and then do the project. That's not the model that I want to be involved with, or that I think our board ought to be involved with, as a caretaker essentially of taxpayer dollars. It has to be the other way around. So this is the way, and the only way that I see it can happen is for us to rescind the agreements and the money. Because for the last year and some, we've kind of tried this soft sell, let's do it this way, let's maybe sue it. We don't see it that way. In fact, we have a proposal on the table today to do another increment of the LaCroix project in the exact same way. So nothing changes until we do something to kind of, go into a different mode of operation.
So I'm kind of looking for arguments to vote yes or no on this motion. I've heard we shouldn't be funding things that benefit private property.
Nope.
You're saying I'm correct in saying that?
No, you're not correct. I'm trying to be as clear as I can. If we decide as a board we want to help some private landowner and we see merit in the project that's associated with our mission, fine. We vote and we do that. But we are assisting that person then. We are not building the project. Right now, the projects that we're doing, we're building them.
Okay.
We find them, we sell them, and we build them.
So just a shortcut here.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't be opposed to, in our policy, we specifically have a wastewater grant for homeowners for septic systems. That's fine, you're fine with that. That's
It has a
totally-
direct nexus to water quality improvement. Yes, no problem.
Okay.
And I might not vote for it.
So I'm
But if
trying-
we have the city come in and they say, hey, we want help, or we have Cornerstone Mission come in and say, hey, we want help. South Dakota School of Mines comes in, hey, we want help. Here's the merits of the project. You guys vote on it. I may or may not vote for that project, but they're asking us for assistance. We can do that if we want to. But we, as a board, cannot go find the project, sell the project, and build the project if it's not a water resources project. And if it's a water resources project, statute kind of indicates that improvements to land, the beneficiaries pay that bill. So we just need to do it a different way.
Okay, and that's for the future. I'm trying to figure out why we should rescind these.
The only way we're gonna get it done is to rescind them. We've been talking about this for over a year and a half. And Driscoll and the Erosion Control Committee continually bring the exact same thing forward. Find a project, sell the project to the landowner, and then we build the project. Or we continue one of these. So the only way to cut that cord is to start over. Take the money away, because otherwise it just continues.
Well, to me, that's just as much the fault of the board as Driscoll.
Well, whatever the fault is, we need to go ahead and change the dynamic, change the paradigm.
Okay, thank you.
Scott, and then Bill.
Mr. Chairman, just so the board is aware, as I've looked at this, we're talking about rescinding $23,820.65 in previously approved project costs and expenditures. Now, I disagree with Director Koth on his interpretation of the statutes. They are very complex, and under various provisions, you can justify about anything you want to do. But I would just say that 46A3A7 gives us, as a water development district, specific authority to construct a water resources project. Now, I would also then point to, to 46A 3A 1.1, which is establishing the duties of water development districts. One of those duties is to provide for water quality and supply projects with any lawful means not otherwise provided to accomplish the purposes of various chapters are cited there. And chapter 46A-2 that is cited there is in fact the chapter for the South Dakota Conservancy District. So our responsibilities encompass the very same as set out in 46A2-2, which is the purposes of the South Dakota Conservancy District. So I think, Director Klein, you were correct in your assessment on that. I am unaware of any other time we have ever rescinded funding for ongoing projects, once they have been approved by the board. We're looking at rescinding, the funding we've allocated to the Green Valley Sanitary District, but that's for the reason that appears to have collapsed, and it's no longer an ongoing active project like these erosion control projects are. If in fact we need to modify our approach to these, we should do that in the future. I would agree if something there needs to be done. But I am not in favor of rescinding funding allocated to projects that were approved by previous votes of this board of directors, unless we can point to something specific about the project itself that is not in compliance with the purpose for which we approve the projects, and I think that is not the case here. Those projects under the statutory authorities, as I have cited and as our lawyer cited, the lawyer we asked to take a look at this, are perfectly valid ongoing projects. Whether or not in the future we decide we want to engage in projects like this or become a non-sponsoring entity of projects, and I think there's good reason why that may be the case, that we no longer want to be the active constructor of projects. That is something we need to decide going forward for the future, but is, in my view, is not a ground, to rescind the ongoing funding. So I would not be in favor of this motion.
Director Young?
I've just got a couple of thoughts on the situation with the exposed shale soil. First, there's a lot of it in our community. And it's been eroding for hundreds of years, if not longer. But my concern is threefold. First is the possibility of adding leafy debris and whatever the grass mix is, potentially bringing in invasives that we're not aware of. Secondly, I talked to a botanist the other day who indicated there are some rare plants on those slopes that could in fact be at hazard. And so I would like to see the possibility of some sort of research into possible negative impacts to existing rare plants. And then the last is the very real possibility of and increase sediment load in the event of a high water event. If we have a big rainstorm, which we've had historically, we could be in fact flooding more debris down into the creek because we've put it there deliberately. Those are my concerns.
Director Driscoll?
I guess, I thank, Director McGregor for, addressing the legalities here, which really seems to be the question at hand. And, at our last meeting, we ended up in executive session, being executive session, there's no, it's not something that I would go into what the discussion of the board was, but the reason for the executive session was that we had incurred a legal fee of, was it $4,700? We, basically, that legal fee was incurred, basically, as near as we can tell, it's always been pretty unclear, but basically through the directions of Director Koth, to address this legal question.
Point of order. That's kind of deviating from the topic.
Okay, so tell me if this deviates. The reply that came from the attorney relative to the legal question, do we have authorization for this kind of work, is consistent with what Director McGregor just stated, that there was apparently no shortage of authorization. There appeared to be no legality question there, that the authorization exists. Now we're hearing a different interpretation from Director Koth because of something about it's a water resources project. So here it is, taking up our time again. We've been around this bush a number of times. I'm going to offer a substitute motion at this point in time.
Okay.
I think we've just had this come up too often, and let's put it to rest. If there's a desire for the future to do business differently, we can certainly address that. But my motion, you ready, Larry? You ready?
Okay.
For the rest of 2026, West Dakota will entertain no more agenda items or discussions from Director Koth regarding legal authorization for erosion control projects or allegations of bylaw violations.
Is there a second to the motion? Not hearing a second for the motion dies. Back to the original motion.
Just another point of information, and I think that Director McGregor will potentially agree with this, even though we don't agree on some of the other substance. After I wrote this memo, I also needed some assistance to be sure that I wasn't too far off of track. So then I engaged a friend of mine who's a senior law partner in one of the firms in town, who has extensive experience in environmental law. He helped me by looking for case law. There is no case law on this. The best guide is basically John Davidson's 1991 law review that really identifies the nexus for all of these hierarchical divisions underneath the Resource Conservation District. So we have different opinions that arise from reading of the statute. This friend of mine also said, I don't care what the statute says. It has to be case law that defines what's going on. There's no case law. So the only way that we're gonna probably do this and figure out whether or not we have a clear message on how we wanna go forward is, we probably should have done this the first time around, and that's to engage and request, because we are a governmental entity, an Attorney General's opinion on what this means. And then we're done. We, as a board, know it, the incoming board knows it, and then we go forward. It's just as simple as that, because it's more than likely that we will have these continued discussions going forward to figure out where we're going. If we have somebody come in, merits of the project, we build the project, and it's all gonna be confusing until we have definitive, kind of approach going forward. So I think that's our answer in the big picture, and that's what I wanted to talk about basically in item 15. That's why they were linked together when I put them together in the executive committee request for items, but they got separated, so now we're kind of morphing them together, but I think that's the end result we need to have.
It seems like we're talking in circles. I'd like to call the question.
Okay, the question's been called.
Public comment first, please.
The question's been called, sir.
You didn't offer any public comment, and that's a violation of open meeting law.
Public comment is item 19.
You have to have public comment before this is voted on.
No, you don't.
Yes, you do.
No, you don't.
Public comment is supposed to be in the beginning or per each agenda item.
The question's been called, let's vote on
The
it.
question has been called. All those in favor of calling the question state by stating aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, the question has been called. And it has passed.
What's that?
Okay.
What do I say?
So, the question was called by Director McGregor?
No.
Mullally, excuse me.
He's a Scotsman, I'm an Irishman.
Okay.
And it has passed.
2/3 vote, so
Yeah.
we're good.
Yep.
And we have to vote on the motion.
Yep, so
Now you should go to public comment.
the motion is up to rescind agreements of remaining budget funds for dry land erosion projects shown on 3-2-26 project assistance summary. This is to include Star Village project 26-001 in addition to South Dakota School of Mines and Cornerstone projects. All those in favor state by stating aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Aye.
Roll call vote.
I accidentally said aye.
Just to clarify, Mr. Chairman, we're voting on Director Post's motion to rescind
Yes.
further funds, right?
Yes.
Okay, Koth,
Yes.
O'Shea, absent. Driscoll,
No.
McGregor,
No.
Mullally,
No,
Young,
Yes.
Mack,
No.
Klein,
No.
Care,
No.
so 2 yes, 6 no.
Okay, item fails. Item 13, information, update from the Erosion Control Committee, that is Director Driscoll.
Chair, point of legal order, 125-1, public bodies must include a dedicated period for public comment at every official meeting before a vote. You just violated the law after you were warned. That is a criminal offense. Please correct it.
If you would like to give the public comment, you can give your public comment.
Thank you. I support the motion, by the way. I remember talking about this several years ago, and I applaud Director Court for bringing it forward. This scam was used for private gain from day one. They specifically said they were hoping to increase their property value so they could sell the property. Me being a real estate investor, they actually reached out to me and promised they would still get these funds if I brought that property. So I think you made the right decision. Not only that, you should see the deteriorating condition of those homes and the public outcry that some of these people don't have basic services, and the fact that we're landscaping the place was a smack to their faces. So I applaud you for doing the right thing, and I want this to be on the record for that. But please, do not violate public meeting laws ever again.
Thank you. Okay, Erosion Control Committee, Director Driscoll.
Well, I pretty much gave my update as part of the previous discussion. I'll just ask if any of the other committee members have anything to add at this point in time.
Okay. Hearing nothing, we'll move on to item 14.
So that's from myself and the committee. It's basically a continuation from our January meeting. We had the information in front of us at that time and, didn't really talk much about it, but the funding for LaCroix has now been exhausted, actually overspent. The project has largely been completed. We ended up in December with the assistance of the city's wildland fire crew covering a lot of the bare shale slopes that we had not addressed to date. Previous to that, we had treated areas of partial vegetation basically with wattles, and then we've added leaves in the fall that have been very effective in slowing the sediment movement and also encouraging vegetation growth. So I would anticipate in the future, we would need to do a certain amount of maintenance, bringing in additional leaves and just see if they end up healing that slope or not. We really don't know, but the $5,000 would be for future maintenance, and my intent is that the overage that we've currently got on the books, whatever that amount is, would be covered out of the new monies that we would be appropriating. So I guess I probably didn't think to make the motion ahead of time, but my motion will be to allocate the $5,000 for this project.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Seconded by Mullally. Open for discussion.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Director Scope.
Couple of items, I guess. First off, this opportunity is now before us to evaluate the project merits of a potentially new project. We don't have an ongoing project at LaCroix Links. It expired in December 31st of 2025. This is a new proposal, so we would need to have a new agreement with the City Parks Department. And we would need to evaluate this project on its merits. Furthermore, the budget here basically is a really good example of the kind of conceptual budgets that we've seen all along. We have a $5,000 budget with $3,500 worth of something, with a $1,000 volunteer award for who knows how many volunteers. So this is a perfect example and a perfect time for us to reverse course on how we want to approach these projects. And if the city wants to continue to have improvements made to their land, they need to come to us and say, hey, we need some more help. Otherwise, I think this is a non-starter. And in form, it's not even close to being complete, because we don't have an agreement ongoing with the city for LaCroix Links.
Any other discussion? Driscoll, not Driscoll, Mullally and Young.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yeah.
So the LaCroix, we have a deficit of $1,962. So if we don't approve this, would we need a separate motion to correct that, or?
I guess I don't really know.
He didn't think about that before we spent the money without an agreement.
Director Young had his hand, and then Director Driscoll.
I think clearly two separate issues. We spent the money. We need to pay it. That aside, again, I fall back on the science. We don't know if these projects are having any real benefit other than anecdotally. I was hoping that the Mines project would give us some science saying this works and here's why. Again, I'm concerned about the introduction of invasives, and I'm concerned about the potential of rare plants, and the fact that now the LaCroix is obviously different than the Star Village project, because if we do have a sediment load and a rain event, it's not really going anywhere. And so that final idea of sediment load is different on this project. But I think that we need to take a step back and decide where we're going with these projects and how we're going about them.
So I will point out again the expenditures that are in overage were incurred before the end of the calendar year while our agreement was still active. A big part of that was the contribution we made to the wildland fire crew, which added up to about 1,500 of that amount. Some of that was for helping disperse leaf bags, and others was for the topsoil we installed, the topsoil and then installation of blanket and everything that went with it. At the time that we first engaged the fire crew, there had not been talk of, I'll just call it reimbursement, even though it turns out being a donation. As it evolved, it was kind of news to me, but I guess I'm fully supportive of the model, that for them to be able to help for a day here or a day there, they had helped for a day. It had been back before we had done a day of caring project on Star Village, installed 7,000 feet of wattles there with the assistance of the South Dakota National Guard, and the fire crew had actually provided a little support ahead of time, cutting some black locust out of the way in an area, and then they contributed also. And there was never any talk of any reason for a reimbursement or a donation. As this evolved, it kind of played out such that for progressively more extensive operations, it would be helpful if we could provide a donation. And so this was kind of a new thing for me, and I guess to me it's probably some of the best money this board has ever spent. It bought 5 days worth of effort for a crew of about a half a dozen people. Is a little different each day, and then basically the tracked skid steer that they provided in topsoiling these particularly steep places. So it's a fraction of what it would cost to contract this kind of work. It was done well within budget on these other projects. Certainly in the case of LaCroix, we were down to the end of an amount that had been budgeted long ago, and the overage we've ended up with, I guess we can deal with that in whatever fashion. But these funds again were spent while we had an agreement in place. In terms of the question whether or not we're reducing sediment movement, this seems to have come up. It's quite honestly completely ridiculous to think that we are not reducing the sediment flow. You look at the silt fences that we've installed at Star Village. There's a couple at LaCroix that show the same thing. These things load up with sediment in a very short period of time. We've not made an attempt to to quantify it, to suggest that we are not reducing, sediment movement substantially is really just one of the basically misinformation things we're hearing from a director who's opposed to these projects. So,
The point that I've made repetitively, and that apparently you have not heard, is that the sediment yield reduction to a water that we have an interest in, what the board is all about, has not been even, no one's estimated or tried to quantify that. Reducing sediment on a slope that goes to nowhere, but another settling area, means nothing to me. The sediment yield to Rapid Creek is the question. And there's never been any effort to make any kind of an estimate on that after 6 years of these continued projects. There needs to be a reevaluation of that from this board. And this is the perfect time to do it with a new project, because this is a new project. We don't have an agreement. A new agreement needs to be instituted. And that agreement with the city, I guess, we can figure out how we want to do these projects as the beginning model.
if there's a desire for quantification of sediment yield, that's something this board could pick up. There is nowhere within all these legal statutes we've been looking at or any other guidance where there is a mandate for quantifying, water quality improvements.
Okay, let's nitpick.
Fine.
That's your name of your game. And go straight ahead.
Director Young?
I'd like to offer a substitute motion to make sure that we even out the bank account and make things right.
By,
What's that?
by what?
With the $1,900 overage that we're showing on the 2026 books that was allotted in 2025.
Yeah, but what's the motion?
Oh, to make sure that that's taken care of. To
By
make
what
sure
means?
that we're paying that money.
So change the amount. from
We're just
5,000.
making sure that's getting covered regardless of what happens with this next $5,000 allocation.
Okay, but I'm still not sure how we're doing that.
I like your idea.
I mean, are we taking the money out of the $5,000? Are we appropriating more money for the project that's already been closed out to get rid of that amount? Just how are we gonna get rid of that amount?
That's what we should do.
That would have to be this board's decision. I don't know where that money's gonna come from. My assumption would be we take it out of the current budget as 2025 has expired.
Well, I think there needs to be.
Mhm.
Yep. Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I don't know where we are in motions, but I think that if we want to be sure that we're on track and all these expenses that came in that were over the amount of the budgeted amount in '25, we just need to make a motion to pay those bills associated with that project, period. And then we deal with something different.
So, the substitute motion is
This is what Director Young said,
just
takes from the
one
new
of,
project.
is that,
That'll be fine. Yes, we just, yeah.
Electric.
Did Kara have something to say?
No, that was the phone.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
Wasn't sure if he was grumbling over there.
Chair.
so is there a second to Director Young's motion? That would be the first thing.
Okay, so yes, you said to, regardless of current motion vote.
Yeah, I
Yes.
guess I'll second that, just so we
Yeah.
pay that bill.
Yeah.
Probably already been paid.
Discussion on the second,
So
Or-
there was a second?
Young Coth.
I was
to
gonna
pay that
say,
bill.
if there wasn't a second, would it work just to change that 5,000 to 1,962? But I'll just throw that out there.
Well, that would be contingent on approval of this motion for this project, so I think it's cleaner just to pay the overage. Just be done
Instead
with it
of
and pay the overage.
Yeah,
And the overage would be the substitute motion to the original motion of the $5,000 for the
yeah, but
erosion control
I
project. So
assume these bills have already been paid, so
I
that's
imagine.
not the question, really.
Yeah.
It's
We're just
clearing off the
authorizing.
books.
yeah. It's clear in the dollar amounts of the substitute motion, instead of adding another 5,000 and then having the bookkeeping work it out. The substitute motion, just to make sure the motion maker agrees with what I'm going to say, is that it would, instead of starting the project, it would just clear the 1962 out.
Did I say what you were gonna say?
That's a,
Okay.
exact- I was thinking my specified amount, so.
Maybe I didn't explain it right, so if you wanna,
I would recommend stating the amount that we're voting on here and not leave it vague.
So is that's the 1962-57 number?
1962-57, yes.
so we're essentially approving that amount of funding for LaCroix previous project.
To clear the book.
Then the motion needs to say that, to appropriate that fund. That money.
So, I don't know, maybe Larry has an idea. I just know that when I did the project expense sheet, you know, I kept track of everything spent and what was allocated. And so what was allocated needs to be increased by 1952 to zero that out. So I'll just go on mute here.
So, Director Mullally, would you consider that a friendly?
Is that, you mean, would Director Driscoll approve of it?
No, would you consider that as a friendly?
Oh, I don't know, I kinda jumped in, I didn't
So
realize this
what
was seconded.
you and Director Koth would have to see it as a friendly, because he is altering your motion, because he has not made a motion yet.
I would see it as a friendly then.
Okay, so my.
Yeah.
Is that, so that's the current project number up there now?
Is the expired project.
Okay,
That's the one that has the 1962-57 overage.
sorry, I can't see anything.
Do we know if that's gonna be the extent of these late invoices?
As long as
There's
we
no
have-
other invoices coming in.
Okay.
So those were all paid out Monday.
Discussion on the motion, Director Driscoll.
So regardless of the current, this isn't really a substitute motion, it's kind of an additional. We're gonna vote on this and then vote on the original motion as well, is that correct?
Not if this passes.
I don't think we
No,
can do that.
this
Right now
would be the substitute, so if this passes, we would technically, and I'll make sure the motion maker agrees with this statement, it would zero out, but then, the $5,000 collaborative project, would die because this one would pass. If my understanding is correct, that's the intent of the motion, is to zero out the remaining amount that it was carried over, the 1962-57, and then that would close out this project.
So I don't know how to do this, maybe Director McGregor, you know, I would think something like substitute motion to approve the amount of $1,900.57 for the 21 underscore blah, blah, blah LaCroix erosion project. Get rid of that regardless of the current motion. So that takes the place of the, if that passes, then the original motion is gone.
Yep.
So would that be an amendment to the substitute motion?
It could be either considered a friendly if the motion maker and the second agree to that change into it, or you would have to open it up as a substitute to the substitute.
Probably cleaner to do the latter,
Okay.
have another substitute motion.
Okay.
to approve funding for that long number LaCroix erosion project. In the amount of $1,962.57.
Is there a second to the
Period,
motion?
that's it.
Yeah.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Klein. Discussion on the motion. Director McGregor?
I think, I'm not gonna vote in favor of this, because I think it's a motion that should stand on its own, in which case I would vote for it, but not as a substitute motion to the request for an additional $5,000. I think we should handle this as a separate motion, appropriate those additional funds to zero it out and deal with the 5,000 directly. May have voted the board on it. So for that reason, I'm not gonna vote for this.
Can we appropriate those funds separately in this meeting, or do they have to wait till the next meeting?
I think we can appropriate it separately.
Even with
I
it?
don't think we can do that this meeting, or the
Right, it'd be a new action.
Yeah.
public, it doesn't have.
Yeah, it doesn't
time.
have the action. I would rule that it would have to be at the May meeting, that it would take action, because it is a budgetary item, and that it is,
Well, then we can't vote on this substitute motion.
Well, that would just amend the $5,000 this way,
That's not
which is
what it
already on the,
says.
what's that?
It's not what it says.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm dealing with the past project, whereas the main motion is
For
not-
additional
not-
funds.
Not existing yet.
Got it.
I don't know, maybe we just don't take action this meeting until we can clean this up.
you want to remove your substitute motion then, since technically it wouldn't fall in?
Well, I guess I don't want to do anything that's not proper, so I would defer to Director McGregor and assume that we probably should not do this substitute motion. So I'll decline on, I'll remove it.
I would agree with that.
And Director Klein,
Sub.
the sub is gone.
Yeah, strike that out.
That's all I have to do. I don't have to say that it's been officially removed. I can just delete it, or
I would just put removed by motion maker, approved by second, just. Okay, now
Back
we
to the
move
previous
back.
substitute.
Now we move back to the substitute motion by Young, seconded by Coe, to eliminate the overage of $1,962.57 on 21_3_RC_XXX_21 LaCroix erosion project regardless of current motion vote. Discussion on the motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would just comment that I don't see how we can eliminate the overage without actually making an award of funds to do that, which is we've just decided we can't do in this meeting because it's not properly on the agenda. So
Yep.
I would again say that this substitute motion is improper.
Would the motion maker in the second like to remove it for the time being?
That makes sense to me.
Yep.
Do you agree with that?
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that, yeah. It got tangled up in the subs.
Yeah.
The idea was just to pay the bill, but apparently we've got to wait until we have that advertised.
That moves us back to the original motion. I'll give our admin a minute to type things in. Okay, the motion that is currently on the floor, request for funding up to, is to provide funding up to $5,000 for the LaCroix golf course erosion control project. Any other discussion on the motion? Director Driscoll.
I guess I'll throw out there that I would be willing, just see if it grows legs. I would be willing to amend my motion instead of requesting $5,000 to request $2,000, which would cover the overage and leave $37.43 for future efforts, which if we needed any funding beyond that, would require additional funding, which essentially just halts the project where it's at, without funds. But keeps it alive. If there's a desire to do work there, we would be able to come back and request additional funding.
So who was the original?
Well, I was the original.
Your second. That's who I'm trying to figure out.
Right.
He's amending the motion.
He's amending it now.
That was Mullally.
And so Mullally's the second. Do you accept the amendment or that was proposed by the?
Yes.
Not to cover the overage, $2,000.
I think all you have to do is say substitute, instead of 5,000, change 5,000 to 2,000.
Is that good? Is that what you mean?
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Yes, Director Coe.
That's a noble effort, but we've got a little bit of a problem there because we don't have an agreement. And so the idea that we're gonna have this open for future work as needed once we cover the overspent budget from 2025, it doesn't really start. We have to have a new agreement with the city. Again, this is a time when they could come to us and we could reinvent a project like, we've talked about where we provide assistance. So I think there has to be a different way to do this. We do not have an agreement with the city right now. None, zero.
Director Driscoll.
I'll refer everybody to page 12. So under item number 1, problem or opportunity statement, third paragraph down in there, the last one before number 2, the last sentence, the request is for funding of $5,000 to be allocated through 2027. So this is written up as essentially whether you want to call it a continuation, this would continue per this agreement, requiring a signature from the city through 2027, which would again leave something in the vicinity of $38 in project funding. So it basically requires a signature from the city. It's whether you want to call it a new agreement, continued, it's semantics.
Director Coe.
Well, I guess that's okay, but on number 12 of that very same item, it indicates that there's no signatory required. And so that's conflicting. I think the simple way is, again, to use this as a great example of how we zero out a project and we restart in a different fashion, where the city actually comes forward, not just a director representing the city interests comes forward. The city comes to us and asks for some help to continue work on the landscaping work on LaCroix Links.
Director Driscoll?
I guess it's correct that it says a signature is not required, but, my motion does not hinge on that, so I'll leave the motion as is and we can vote on it in that fashion.
Any other discussion from directors? Not hearing any other discussion. All those in favor of the amended motion? You want to go up to the original motion so I can read it? To provide funding up to now $2,000 for collaborative erosion control project at the LaCroix Links Golf Course. All those in favor state by stating aye.
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 All those opposed?
Aye. Oh, no. Same
Roll
sign.
call.
Just to clarify, that's, oh, never mind. Just getting ahead of myself.
This is 14. Koth,
No.
O'Shea, absent. Driscoll,
Yes.
McGregor,
Yes.
Mullally,
Yes.
Young,
Nope.
Mack,
No.
Klein,
Yes.
Care,
Yes.
5 in favor, 3 noes.
Okay, that item passes. Okay. Item number 15, discussion and action on Water Development District purposes, sponsorship, and assistance for water resources as projects applied to West Dakota within the permits of law. It's kind of a dual, it's McGregor and Koth both brought up similar items, so it was combined. I apologize to Director Koth for kind of separating it, but we had talked at the committee and thought it was a similar action. Which one of you guys would like to start first?
I'll start off. It seems to me as our discussions here and in our executive sessions have said that, we all have very different views of what we should be doing or should not be doing, what the statutes say we can do or maybe cannot do. This particularly was brought to my attention or belief that we should have this discussion after the vote we had a couple of meetings ago, or the last meeting on the Black Gap Water Development Project, which of course I have a conflict with, but as I remember the discussion over that, it was essentially a 4-3 vote with one director being absent. But as I remember that discussion, it was turned down because it was deemed not to be a project of benefit to the public, that it was a privately brought forth project, and that it didn't sufficiently, apparently, although it was a dam project, it didn't officially impede sediment flows into Rapid Creek. I was astounded by that vote, particularly considering that they'd been here before and we had told them to do things and come back to us, and they did exactly what we told them to do. And we came back and turned them down. And so that started me thinking, well, are we only here to fund projects that have a public and overall public benefit? I mean, I think that's contrary to the statutes we've been looking at that specifically talk in terms of both public and private projects. Are we only here to promote projects that have identifiable sedimentation controls? Is that what we're supposed to be doing? To me, in my mind, we're here to promote a water development project that we deem, for whatever reasons, sufficiently promotes water quantity or water quality enhancement, whether that is from a public agency, a private group coming forth, whether it has identifiable public access, if you will, benefits or not. I mean, I think the statutes just say whatever we can do to promote water quantity and quality in this district, which is, of course, Pennington County west of Cheyenne River, we should be doing, be it private, public, or what have you. But I'm wondering after that go-around before, whether the majority of the board thinks that way or not. My own feeling is that we're here not to assist other public entities or public agencies in doing what they want to do or what they should be doing anyway without our help, like the erosion projects on the School of Mines, which I think is something the School of Mines ought to be, its mission taken care of on its own, not with us. We are a totally public-funded subdivision of state government. I think we now have nearly $1 million in the bank for projects, and we are not spending it. We are turning down projects that spending that money, that extra money, should be undertaken to fund. And I'm just at a loss, really, as to know exactly what we are doing, what we all think we should be doing. And so that's why I asked for this to be put on the agenda. Again, I think we should be funding projects, public or private, in terms of the benefit, the direct benefit, regardless of whether they are proposed to us by a public entity or a private entity. And I don't think we should be using our money simply to fund or supplement the budgets of other government agencies that ought to be doing things on their own. That's not what we're here for. So that's my take on it. Ron, do you have?
Well, I don't necessarily disagree, with what you said. I think we do need, as a board, to have more guidance on the kind of things that we should be looking at in terms of benefits to water resources or water quality or water quantity. I think we need to take a hard look at what water resources projects are and how the Water Development District fits into the hierarchy of the Resource Conservancy District. As part of my looking at all this stuff, I looked at all the other Water Development District websites, if they had one, to try and see the kind of stuff they were doing. One thing, there were several things that kind of struck me, and then I'll go to another. I got one other thing to say, but the East Dakota specifically identifies the statutes that they operate under in their web page right at the very beginning. So if someone's wondering about whether or not something fits, then it's clearly stated on East Dakota's website where they need to go to look for guidance on whether or not a project fits the criteria. The other websites, they had a variety of different projects, and they had a variety of history that went back many, 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 many years. Many of the districts were involved with what I would call partnerships with the Conservation District on an annual basis. The Conservation District was working on things like tree planting, buffer strips, stuff like that. And so there was an annual contribution of some amount, almost always was a similar amount, from a water development district to the appropriate conservation district. That was a commonality. There wasn't enough information, but some of the water development districts also were involved with dam building. There was very little information available, and I didn't take the time to call the water development district director to find out how all that was comported, but presumably it fell within the confines of how a water development district collaborates with other government entities to build a dam. Conservation district, sometimes the game and fish, whoever is building the dam for essentially impoundment of water to benefit an entity. Wasn't directed at all toward, there wasn't any commentary at all, just a dam. So in regards to the Black Gap one specifically, it's a water resources type project. But again, that's where in this case, we may not have known exactly what the right answer was in terms of the statutes, but I think we probably did the right thing based on 46A3E7, where it says beneficiaries of improvements to their land pay that bill. And so improving a pond that's not accessible to anybody but the homeowners in this association in terms of its benefit for, you know, the enhanced aesthetics and probably private recreational activities is an improvement to property. And so they really were responsible for paying the bill on that kind of a project to enhance their property. And so I guess, you know, and I probably stated it in the long discussion we had on item number 13, but I think we need some help on vetting what this is all about, because there is no case law if this senior partner is right. The only guidance is a law review from 1991, and the examples that we've seen on these other water development districts and the obvious, you know, thrashing about that we've been doing, you know, and Director Driscoll and I in particular have been having the takedown match almost every meeting. I'm tired of that. We need to have help. And I think we need to get an Attorney General's opinion, working with the Executive Board, to ask some questions that will help us identify what a water resource project is and how we get involved, you know, from a building perspective, if we ever want to build projects again. If we don't want to build projects, then maybe it's a moot point and we just go back to clearly identifying the fact that we want to assist people, and we work with these people to have them come to us and ask for help, and then we, you know, identify the merits of each project based on the merits of each project.
I'll just comment as one of the new kids on the block, you know, that would be very helpful to me. In the discussions we've had and the research material and stuff, I've learned a lot, and I would change my vote on the Black Gap, that because of our mission statement and because of some of the materials I've read, I don't think that it needs to be an all or nothing, that I think that we can assist in the water quality for recreational purposes and things that we have in our mission statement. And I think that any entity is willing to come forward and put forward 80% or whatever shows a serious intent on improving that water quality for all the purposes that we have in here. I think it also benefits upstream and downstream, regardless of sedimentation control, and just by doing a reset on some of those things. I really want to look into the dams that you mentioned here and how that works, because I think that there are going to be some private entities that we will be able to help, you know, and overall water quality and control through some of those things.
Well, I think that it's a little bit tangential, but it's related. I think we're going to learn more as we get into this 319 program about how that program can help people. You know, they have criteria, you know, that needs to be matched up with, and then it's vetted through both, through this board, because we're the project sponsor. Then it goes to the DANR and peer, and then it goes to the non-point task force. So there's several levels of oversight on when somebody comes in and asks for money through 319. Right now, this board does not have any kind of criteria. The Conservation Commission and the Conservation Districts, they have very established criteria. When somebody comes in and wants help, they can give them the docket of cost share. They can give them, that has the information on what's the maximum amount of in-kind match, what's the minimum amount of cash from that contributor, what's the maximum amount of cash that the Conservation District. They have all kinds of criteria to help people understand, and the board itself understand what they can do.
Right.
We have nothing like that. So, you know, we're kind of always inventing it from the beginning on any given project, which is very uncomfortable. You know, flexibility is good, but I think some criteria would be helpful for our board if we're going to, you know, independently look at projects outside of this 319 project, which is probably a couple years away before anybody ever comes and asks us for any money, because we'll be planning. So there needs to potentially be some work there, but before we do that, I think we need to have a good basis on what what it means, interpretation of statute. Because again, and he could be wrong, but there's no case law on this. So it's all a matter of how Scott reads it, how that guy reads it, how that attorney reads it, how some retired fisheries biologist reads it. It's all a matter of interpretation. And we don't have, then we just argue. Yeah, so I think we need help.
Director Malali?
Well, I think you stated that everybody reads the appropriate material, they have their opinion, and then we have a vote. Majority vote wins. It's very nebulous, all this stuff, trying to define it. We had the High Sega water project, which passed, which was totally private, but that was the decision of the board to vote for that. So I guess I'm not necessarily against trying to clarify some of these things, but what it's going to boil down to, I think, is people justifying what they want in advance anyway. Just my opinion.
Well, I'm gonna make a motion. This was supposed to say action. My request said discussion and action,
Okay.
but I guess that got excised.
Actually, I see,
Discussion and action.
it does say action, in lowercase, so that is my
So-
vote. Do you have a comment, Mr. Bialotta?
Yes, I don't know what attorney you've been contacting, but there is doctrine, case law, and South Dakota statutes that would back up Director Coth. The doctrine is called the gift clause, as in an unconstitutional gift, that public funds cannot fund anything private, business or private entity or person, unless they receive at least an equal benefit in return. And typically the case law says it must be measurable. So I can provide Director Coth the case law on this, and then in South Dakota it's even classified worse as theft. That by giving public funds for private gain is theft, and the amount of funds is dictated the amount of the theft, and in this case it would be grand theft. It would be a class 5 or 4 felony, 10 to 5 years in jail.
So does that mean we can't do the 319 project?
Yeah.
Okay. I want to end up in jail.
I would say, Mr. Chairman, based on that, if we want to accept that everything we've done in this meeting is unconstitutional. We have no basis to be funding hydrology projects or Earth Day projects or any of the rest of this stuff we're talking about.
You wanted to make a motion?
Well, I was just gonna follow up on what I kinda tried to put forward, is the idea that we need some assistance on understanding what a water resources project is and where exactly water development districts fit into the hierarchy of, basically statute, because we don't have any of that to help us. So I'm gonna motion that we work, collaboratively with the executive committee as a lead to get an attorney general's opinion to help us move forward.
I'll second that.
Seconded by McGregor. Making sure the
Opinion on,
Definition of water resources project, ability to assist, construct, etc. I don't think we want to go into any more detail in the motion. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, we can work out the language, and I think probably the motion should direct specifically that the chairman request the opinion
Yes,
of the attorney general.
I agree.
okay, so scratch the water resources, definition on water resources projects, and just say opinion.
No, you can leave that, I think.
Committee to,
Work with the executive committee and chairman. And
And direct chairman to obtain.
Yeah, yeah, and direct chairman. Yeah, something like that.
Does the second agree with how the motion is stated on the board?
You said something else too, definition of water resources projects and something else, and then.
Providing assistance, constructing, et cetera.
Okay.
And we could, yeah, I don't think we want to cite the statutes.
Yeah.
Other than saying something about, as identified generally in chapter 46A of SDCL. A.
And the second agrees with the motion on the floor? Scott?
Pardon?
You agree with it?
I would agree.
Okay. Discussion on the motion?
I guess a question, Mr. Chair. It seems like this puts a pretty big ambiguous duty on you. Are you okay with this?
Yes, because I have the executive committee to help me.
Okay.
So this will be a joint
You
effort.
can always say, no, I'm not submitting that question. I'm
Yeah.
not submitting that.
Oh, no. I have Director McGregor as my vice, so we'll get working
Okay, I
on
just
it.
wanted to make sure, because you're mentioned specifically in there.
I just want you to know, Director Mullally, I'm going to burn the candle at both ends for the next 9 months, and then after the December meeting, I'm gonna probably leave my shoes like those professional athletes and walk out the door.
Yeah.
So,
We'll hang your jersey.
Okay.
yeah.
Fair enough.
Any other discussion on the motion?
I'll pose a question. I don't think it needs to be addressed in the motion, but whether or not this inquiry should be made through DANR. It seems like to some extent, I know there's nobody there that's in charge of water development districts, because I did make an inquiry to ask that question, but we seem to operate, and probably Scott, you can shed some light, it seems like we operate under their auspices to some extent. Is that accurate?
Not really. We are a designated political subdivision of the state. As such, we are authorized to request, AG opinions.
Yeah, we're housed under we're actually supposedly responsible to the Board of Water and Natural Resources under the Resource Conservancy District. So I think we're pretty independent.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing they do, I think, is the only thing they specifically do is reallocate our districts after
Well,
census.
if you have a chance to read that law review, of course, it was 91, so
I
there's
did
been
that.
changes.
It's 91. A lot of it's
But
changed
there's,
since
there's
then.
all kinds of rules that we couldn't spend more than 50 grand without getting approval from the
Yeah.
Board of Water and Natural Resources
Yeah.
at one time.
But that was true back then. Like you said, it's a
Right.
91 article.
There's a lot of stuff changed.
A lot of things have changed, and even including the organization of water districts, but it's worth a read for everybody that
Yeah.
hasn't done so yet.
Davidson does a good job on water.
Okay, not hearing any other discussion on the item. All those in favor of the motion state by stating aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay. Motion passes. It's past 5:45. You might need to
Well,
duck out.
yeah, I think so.
Just to get us going, I'll let everybody know if it's okay with you, Ron, I'll draft something up and send it to the executive committee as a starting,
Okay, well,
as a starting
I'd be
point.
an ad hoc member, but yeah, I'd appreciate seeing it.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll see you, thanks.
Okay, item 16, chair's comments. So thank you everyone for attending. We did dwindle down, but the hardcore people that are staying to the end, I appreciate it. Second item, I did some contacting. I contacted USGS just to see what they're up to. Majority of the USGS office is helping their counterparts in Montana. I reached out to the Pennington County Conservation District to see what they're up to. They're hiring a new admin. Their admin had left, so the nice lady that discussed about our previous partnership, she is no longer there, and so they're looking to fill the admin position. And I've been helping out with the 319 committee and working with the A&R to move that forward. That's items from me. Items from directors. So,
Creek cleanup, Saturday morning, 10 a.m. We're gonna meet at the farmer's market and work up from there. It'll be our third one this month.
Mr. Chairman, at our first meeting, we all went through this Attorney General's assessment of the open meeting law. I would encourage everybody to do so again. We are required to provide public comment at a time and place in the agenda, that we choose and are able to limit it. We are not required to have public comment on everything we do before we take a vote. Anybody has a disagreement with that, they're certainly free to contact the state's attorney and make a complaint against us for violating what they view the open meeting law is.
any other comments from directors? Not hearing any. Items from admin. Items from the public. Yes.
I just have one. Well, a couple real fast. So when they question whether you can still fund USGS projects, forgive me, I can't see your name tag. That would not be prohibited because public funds would still be going to a public entity. When it comes into question is when it goes in, public funds go to private entities or private individuals. So I just want to clarify that. And may I ask in the future that you leave the back door open because that is the handicapped entrance and this one is not handicap accessible.
Do we
That's why
have
I knocked on that one
the lock key on that one, or?
Never even noticed there's a door there.
Okay. We apologize, Mr. Bonnell, for that.
But I want to thank Director Koth. He's knocked it out of the park today. Thank you, sir. You did a great job, and I'm glad to see some of these things being corrected.
Any other items? Okay. I'd like to use this time for adjournment, and enjoy your days, guys.
Yeah, thanks for sticking it out.